hurricane, a tidal wave. Essence perfect, life looks brilliant. Give me more of this. I'm out of control, about to blow, and I've been caught in the undertow. So toxic, but I can't get enough. You bury me, bury me. Yeah, you bury me, bury me. You've got me hypnotized. Push me out of myself. You've got me hypnotized. I can see, I can hear, going crazy, but the light has got me hypnotized. You've got me hypnotized. Can get you out of my head again. Is it wrong? Is it right? It's like I've won my final war without a fight. I'm out of control, about to blow, and I've been caught in the undertow. So toxic, but I can't get enough. You bury me, bury me. I know you bury me, bury me. You've got me hypnotized. Push me out of myself. You've got me hypnotized. I can see, I can hear, going crazy, but the light has got me hypnotized. You've got me hypnotized. Can get you out of my head. Get you out of my head again.
Please note.
Never gonna stop, never gonna change, never gonna do the things you say. I run my own way to get there. Pulls a coin and I don't seem to care. In the air, no more crowd, just the opposite kind of few clouds. So tell me the storm is coming for the sake of all your lies. Why don't you try to be wise? Now that I need you anyway. Just to feel like I'm fading. And though my heart breaks a beat down, I cross the lines just to tell you. Don't lead the way, don't even say that I try with a shadow playing parade. I feel like I'm fading.
Now, 4 great ways to lose weight with Thrifty New Plan.
Is there water in your hairspray? There shouldn't be. Water takes the shape out of your hairdo. You need the water-free hairspray. Self-styling Adorn. Adorn's water-free formula puts shape into your hair and keeps it there. Actually holds up to twice as long. So put shape into your hairdo and keep it there with the water-free hairspray. Self-styling Adorn.
Well, how do you do, sir? I understand this is your first taste of Carling's Black Label beer.
Yeah,
And, sir, what is your reaction?
well, I like it.
Good. Perhaps you can be more specific. How would you describe the flavor?
I like it.
Good. Light,
Yeah,
dry,
yeah,
and what else?
I like it.
Good. And the quality of Black Label?
Oh, I like it.
Good. Would you say it was high quality?
Yeah.
Or top quality?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's premium quality at the popular price.
I like that, too.
Good. And now, sir, see all those people out there?
Where?
You, sir, have been co-starring on TV with everybody's favorite Carling's Black Label beer.
Oh, you don't say.
Mabel, Black Label.
Hi, Mabel.
It's a dark, cold world out there. There's a time to live and a time for a man to die. There are places for dead men in the
just like that, it's Thursday night, and you know what that means. It's video time, it's party time with the Video Bros, because I've been doing too much partying already. I'm Bobby Munson, and the man beside me, the man with the angelic voice, he's Papa Smokes! Papa Smokes, happy Thursday. How you doing, brother?
Oh man, it is a happy Thursday, Munson. I'm doing great. It's Boxing Day. We've just had the big day and the big celebration of Christmas. Now's the time to get back to work, back down to some territory wrestling.
You bet. We're going to be doing that here tonight. Looking forward to it, Papa Smokes. And I got to ask, it was the big day yesterday. And partake in any particular foods that you want to talk about? I got to know, what was the meal of choice yesterday, Papa Smokes?
It was pretty traditional style. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, Brussels sprouts, all the rest of that stuff. And don't forget, Munson, the cranberry sauce in the can. You got to stand it up on the plate, pull the can off so you've got the jelly standing in the shape of the can. Beautiful, baby. Beautiful.
Absolutely delightful. And you know what? Mine extremely similar to that as well, too, Papa Smokes. We had some salads, I think, added in there. Of course, some pumpkin pie for after the dinner meal was done. I mean, there was chocolates, all sorts of stuff. But, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot of food, but it was a lot of fun at the same time, too. We got a lot of young ones that were involved this year that we got to celebrate Christmas with. And that's what it's really all about. It was truly a joy. But, yeah, it was fun. But that time's over. New Year's right around the corner, Papa Smokes. Any particular drink of choice aside? I know beer is the obvious choice. That's always going to be an easy choice. Is there anything else on the drink agenda for New Year's Eve?
Whiskey shots as usual, Munson. You know that I prefer the bourbon, but I'll take anything. But these days I'm liking bullet bourbon. Strong, but smooth. Kicks like an Alabama mule. Good stuff. Alongside with a beer. Have a couple of Boilermakers. Perfect. It'll get you there.
I got some of that Wild Turkey 101 just sitting over to the side here, Papa Smokes. I got the stuff that'll put a fire in the old belly.
Absolutely, that's the strong stuff. Good one, Munson. You'll have hopefully a couple nice evenings with that. Don't drink it all in one evening.
No. That's we'll take it a little easier on that one. But of course, I got a lot of choices and stuff, and had a great Christmas. Got new shirt there. Wife got that for me. I was very happy to receive that, and it's been a fun time having a few drinks, having a few and watching some wrestling too, because I had to make sure to get prepared for this particular show here tonight, as well as getting some of that PPW stuff edited. And speaking of guys, we know Papa Smokes, it's BDJ in the house. BDJ, I hope you had a Merry Christmas, brother, and also Happy New Year to you as well, because the next time Papa Smokes and I are live here on Ring Respect Radio, it's going to be 2025, Papa Smokes. It'll be January 2nd by that point in time. And man, I'm psyched. I'm psyched for, a night in, but a night in with a lot of drinks. There is people in my area set fireworks off every damn year. And there's some pretty badass fireworks shows that go on in behind the place where I live too. And it's great. I'm going to probably go out there. It should be just the right temperature to be able to go outside comfortably here in Saskatchewan, watch a few fireworks. The wife and I, sit here, probably jam out to some tunes, have a good time, a few drinks, ringing the new year well.
That appeals to me a lot, Munson. You're of the same mindset as me. I don't like to go out on New Year's Eve because everybody's out. Yeah. And all the part-time partiers are out. And now you're waiting in line for drinks. You're waiting in line for the bathroom. You got to take a cab home at night. That's going to take 2 hours. I just stay in that night and party on another night. That's what I do.
Yeah. I 100% full agreement with you, Papa Smoke. Couldn't have said it better. It's really, prices get jacked up as well too. And that's if you can even get service anywhere. And like you said, cab rides and everything, it's not worth the time and effort when you can really just, sit relaxed at home. Hello, Astrid, joining the chat here. Ring Respect Radio. Thank you for joining us. Happy that you're here to be here. Also, I got to mention Papa Smokes after us, or quite a bit after us, but tonight, Honor Ramble 9:15. No, sorry, 10:15 Eastern. Getting my times right, man. I've been hitting the holiday sauce way too hard. But yes, 10:15. We have got on a ramble. It is Kimmy Sokol's farewell episode. The last time Kimmy Sokol is going to be doing any wrestling media streams at all. So come join us in saying farewell to Kimmy here tonight. There's going to be a lot of people dropping in to the show live, including myself. Then there's going to be some videos played as well too, and we got some pretty cool videos for people supporting Kimmy. So looking forward to that. But I say we get down to business, Papa Smokes. We give the people what they came here for, and that's taking a trip through the territories, going down the wrestling road, going back to the time when wrestling was paving the way. And we're going over to Detroit for a little Detroit Rock City, my friend. We're talking about big time wrestling at Detroit, as Ole, yes, as Ole likes to do. We do like to do that. Go big as people are heading out. We're going to have a fun time. But yes, hopefully Ole also likes to take these trips through the territories. I know BDJ does. Another trip through the territories. You got it, brother.
Yeah, you know who's going to be here. The BDJ loves the old wrestling content. Thanks for listening, brother, as always.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. So big time wrestling out of Detroit, Papa Smokes. One of the reasons that we ended up selecting this a couple of weeks when we were planning it out was because we had a little bit of base knowledge because of the stuff that we had read previously in the book about the Sheik. We had picked up a lot about big time wrestling. We had already taken a forward interest in big time wrestling, the territory as it was. So we land right here. We're able to bring this to everybody with, I wouldn't say as doing less preparation, but there was a little bit more knowledge going in. So it was easier to sit down, watch some matches, brush up on a little bit of the history and stuff like that. And let me tell you, there's a lot of damn matches on YouTube. There is quite a bit of content, some very old content nonetheless, but a lot of stuff you can watch from big time wrestling out of Detroit.
And that's kind of refreshing too, as we do these trips through the territories. We've been finding that some of them don't have a lot of surviving tape because as we've talked about in the past, videotapes during the videotape age, videotapes themselves were very expensive. So for the live shows, they used to tape them and then tape over them. Even sometimes the TV segments would be just using the same tape, taping over. So sad to think of all the stuff that was lost, but thankfully this isn't the case in big time wrestling. Tons of stuff still out there.
Yeah, exactly. So go check out YouTube. You'll be able to find some of the matches. We might even get around to playing one of those matches here for you guys later in the show. So stay tuned for that. But Bob Smokes, I mean, it's easy to sit here and start talking about what we know from big time wrestling. And a lot of it is going to come back to this about the original Sheik and his purchase of the territory itself. But let's go back a little bit further than that. I think we can start even towards the beginning, more in particularly speaking about Harry Light and the Harry Light wrestling office, which is kind of the originator for starting these promotions within the Detroit area and everything. And Harry Light also one of the key instrumental players in the formation of the National Wrestling Alliance as well, too.
Yeah, very much so. Huge promoter and huge figure in the development of pro wrestling in America. Harry Light, after World War II, was promoting boxing and then started promoting wrestling in the city of Detroit and a few other places in Michigan, including Lansing, Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, and Saginaw, and other cities as well. So the history goes back really to the 20s, but for our purposes, it didn't really start to become a full-on territory until after World War II. Kind of the 1948 year was when the NWA coalition was first formed with Harry Light and a few other guys. And then by the 50s, Light had two other promoter partners, Jack Britton and Bert Ruby, and they got TV first on local channel 7. So they were showing at first weekly, and then after a while, several shows per week, promoting their wrestling stars and their wrestling shows. So really getting their territory off the ground early here. This is in the late 40s still.
Yeah, and again, even in the early stages of their television, I believe that they were always one of the number one rated cable television shows in the Detroit area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was, and a lot of these smaller wrestling shows were like that. Wrestling has always had quite a good popularity, and then remember that in the late 40s, they were just starting to approach the time often known as wrestling's golden age of the 50s and early 60s, when it really started to take off as entertainment and really started packing fans into large buildings in the cities and then the smaller towns as well.
It sure did. Now, there was also a purchase of the company or a change in ownership. Jim Barnett and Johnny Doyle took over after that period of time there. Once we got to the point of having Harry Light more involved with the NWA and getting out of the picture, that is where the promotion went to before it actually went over to Ed Farhat, or as we know him, the original Sheik.
Yeah. Jim Barnett and Johnny Doyle had bought out Light. And when they bought the company, the circumstances of the purchase stated that they wouldn't be part of the NWA without Light there. So Barnett and Doyle were running Outlaws, they like to call it, which just means not part of the official NWA governing body. So not subject to the same quality standards as the other NWA territories. And we know this name Jim Barnett very well. We'll come across him more in the future when we do some of these other territories, especially New York with the WWF and WWF. Jim Barnett, a huge player in that, a very interesting character that we'll have to get in more depth with at some point in the future. But a guy that had some very big, very interesting ways of promoting wrestling on a large scale. A lot of people, or I should say, the legend is that Barnett was the guy that came up with the concept for WrestleMania, pitched that to Vincent McMahon Jr. to say, have one giant show per year where all your angles from the second half of the year lead up to that one big show. Put it all on the line, spend $1 million on one show, but make 5 million. That's the kind of promoter Jim Barnett was. Like I said, we'll see him in the future. He did all kinds of projects with wrestling throughout the South. And as we'll see at some point too, was interested in Australia, in opening up Australia as a bigger territory. So some very interesting things about Jim Barnett as well.
You bet. Yeah, I can't wait to unfold more about Jim Barnett. Before we start talking about the Sheik taking over the promotion, was there anything else in there that in your notes you wanted to cover here, Pop Smokes?
No, I think this is where the Sheik comes in 1964, as he was known then, Ed Farhat. I get a little weird feeling even just saying his real name. It's like, no, he wouldn't like that.
No.
Nope. If he was in the same room as me right now, he'd probably be carving my forehead with a pencil and biting the flesh off my forehead for going against kayfabe a little bit. But in fact, that's how he started in the business, was under his real name, Ed Farhat.
Yeah.
And he started as a wrestler in the 60s as Ed Farhat because he didn't need any more of a gimmick at that time. He had lived in Michigan and Detroit all his life. His parents had immigrated from Lebanon, and this is the American dream. Everybody's an immigrant from somewhere, right? They came from Lebanon, worked hard in the car factories, worked hard at their jobs, set up a new life. It's the American dream. They set up a new life in Detroit, and with all their kids, managed to give them a few bucks and a few advantages in life. And Ed Farhat joined the military, the American Armed Forces, fought for his country in Korea, and then came back as not exactly a war hero, but you have to think that anyone that went off and fought for their country and came back is a bit of a hero in a way.
Yeah.
So he was respected around the Detroit community. And when he got into wrestling, that's what he went with was Ed Farhat, All-American, uh, Army hero, and grappler. He was a babyface, and he was a scientific style grappler. Interesting to think that that's how he started out, right?
It really is interesting to see that. And I know we talk so much in depth about it, is that he comes in and sometimes those things that don't work and you've got to switch it up, you've got to go a different direction. And had he not chosen to go the way of this malicious heel, this, the Sheik character that he created that became so prosperous and money making. I mean, this was one of the reasons the Detroit territory itself became such a spectacle, is people wanting to come to see the Sheik or see somebody maybe battle the Sheik and put damage to the Sheik, because people feared him. They feared him in name alone. They didn't even need to see him in person. The Sheik was feared through the stories that were passed along at the time about the man.
Very much so. And he was so deeply entrenched in kayfabe too that he let none of the general public see what he was actually like. He didn't let them see his family. He didn't even let his family see some of the relationships he had in wrestling, which were favorable because it went against kayfabe that the Sheik would not care about any of the other wrestlers or be friends with them or go into business with them. He was fiercely, fiercely loyal to kayfabe, and he had this babyface persona as the hometown hero and all that. But when he was influenced by other kind of crazy style heels like Killer Kowalski and Fritz von Erich, where he started making the crazy faces and he started using not so much wrestling maneuvers and typical wrestling holds and all that, but started in with the eye raking and the back scratching and the eye gouging and all that stuff coming, and then starting to use the blade and get bloody all the time, and his opponents are getting bloody. And this translated into good business because some promotions, the fans kind of lean a certain way. They want to. Some of them like the babyface scientific wrestling style better. They want to see that. But there's always that segment of the population that wants the blood and guts. They want to see some violence. And that's what the Sheik brought to the fans of Detroit.
He sure did. Yeah. And, I want to mention, because again, we've talked about it so many times, Papa Spokes, about the way you could trust yourself. If you're a promoter, you can trust yourself. And that's why a lot of them you saw were multi-time champions or the main champion of their territory. And this was definitely the case with Big Time Wrestling. So Big Time Wrestling under the NWA banner had 2 championships that there were available. The NWA United States Heavyweight Championship Detroit version, and then the NWA World Tag Team Championship Detroit version as well. And yeah, again, the Sheik himself booked 12 times on that top spot, 12 times the former NWA United States champion Detroit version. So again, another example of, you can trust yourself, why these guys will be booked. But take that away, and I got to ask for a moment. I know this kind of swerves what we normally do here on the show, but I got to ask, do you still believe that if Sheik was not the promoter, that based on what he was bringing to the squared circle, the gimmick and the eyes and the attention, do you think that other bookers would have wanted to book him that strong the way he booked himself?
It's a tough question. I think that booking himself so strongly in big time wrestling in the long run was probably a negative thing. In the short run, it got them noticed, it put them on the map, it made their top guy the Sheik completely. But in a way, it also was kind of like a hot shot booking in a way. The fans tired of that after a while. They tired of the Sheik always having the stranglehold on the belt. And I mean, as we've seen, there's various ways to book a championship run with a wrestler. And the Sheik just basically strangled that title, and the fans almost kind of gave up on seeing him lose it for any length of time at some point because he might lose it for a weekend or a week, or he would lose it at the one show and then 2 weeks later he would regain it. So I think I think it worked twofold. It was negative in the long run, but in the short run, the Sheik made himself such a gigantic superstar that now he could work anywhere in the States, really anywhere in the world, because he had many successful runs of Japan. He made half his money in his whole career in Japan. They couldn't get enough of him. But yeah, again, eventually Detroit and Michigan kind of tired of the Sheik, but that was this is jumping ahead now. He had a very successful run there.
Oh, very successful indeed. Yeah, no, I just sorry to throw you a bit of a curveball there, Papa Smokes, but I was curious your thoughts on that in particular. So,
That's a good question.
yeah, but the next thing. So again, I want to give you the opportunity in case you got some other things you want to cover. But the kind of next thing I wanted to mention is a little bit about the competition phase from All-Star Championship Wrestling. So if there's anything prior to that, though, if you want to still throw in there.
No, we're good. We're good.
All right, just double checking. So, about 1971, I believe it was, that they faced competition from Dick the Bruiser and Wilbur Snyder, All-Star Championship Wrestling, which was taking a lot of the talent in the Indiana area, or from, in particular, World Wrestling, the World Wrestling Association, and a lot of defects going that way, which really put kind of a damper and a stranglehold on big time wrestling in Detroit at the time.
For sure. And they were battling for some of the same audience. Obviously, Bruiser wanted to come. Bruiser and Snyder. Wilbur Snyder was Bruiser's son-in-law, so they're keeping it in the family. He had Snyder as one of his main guys. They decided to expand outside of Ohio. There's not a lot of huge centers in Ohio, so they wanted to come next door to Michigan, start running in the big city of Detroit, because as you could see in the beginning of the 70s, Detroit was really starting to boom as a city with all that auto manufacturing and all the shipping and everything that they do through Detroit. A lot of people were making a lot of money in Detroit, and it was really growing as a city. So the other businessmen in wrestling noticed that, Dick the Bruiser being one of those. So he wanted to start running in Detroit, much to the chagrin of the Sheik. And then not only do you battle for the fans now, but you're battling over talent, not wanting to feature the same talent as the other company, but kind of having your hands tied in a way because you want to get the best talent that you can for your shows. So they had to come to an agreement at some point, and then started working together. And the Bruiser and the Sheik were a match made in heaven. They had a long feud, and the Bruiser, I mean, if you know anything about this guy, he was old school as living shit and a real tough guy, and he was very convincing to the fans. Munson, you've seen pictures of Dick the Bruiser. Does anybody look more like a professional wrestler than Dick the Bruiser?
No,
He's huge, with a big beer belly and a scarred face and missing teeth and all that. Just absolutely awesome. And that's the baby face. That's Dick the Bruiser as the baby face. So this combination ended up being quite lucrative for both, especially the Sheik when he was hosting the shows at Cobo Hall, which we can talk about in a few minutes too.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it was around the time that this competition came in for them. That's really where the decline started for big time wrestling, and in general, really, that you could almost say that was the fall of big time wrestling in many ways. Unless like there's anything I missed there, Papa Smokes, but I'm pretty sure that was at the time when the shift it happened around that place, and that's when things just weren't as bright as they once were.
Yeah, well, it was a shift. If you're talking about 1971, it was a shift that took 9 years then, because the company didn't close until 1980. But
yeah,
things things started on the downside too. There was even though the city of Detroit had been expanding, there was a pretty big recession in 1973, 74 in the US. People remember how high the gas prices were. Inflation was off the board. The stock market was doing poorly. So fans just didn't have the money in the pocket to spend like they did. That was kind of a tough time to get through. And then these problems with overbooking and competition with other territories, such as Dick the Bruiser in Indianapolis, these factors all came together to work negatively against big time wrestling. The Sheik, as the promoter and as the top wrestler in the federation, was also spread very thin. He's doing shots all over the U.S. and all over the world, from Los Angeles and San Francisco out to Honolulu. He knows the Funks. He's going down to Amarillo, Texas. He knows the Fullers in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then Japan was taking up so much of his time because he could go there. The Japanese promoters were paying very, very handsomely to get top American stars over, especially ones like the Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher, which terrified their fans and were just absolute drawing power in Tokyo, Japan, and the other cities in Japan. So Sheik would go over and work in Japan just to get a big briefcase full of money, kind of thing, in which he could then turn around and use to keep his promotion going.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, I know you probably got a little bit more you might want to cover here, Papa Smokes, to give you the chance to do so before we get into maybe talking about a little bit of what would the kids call it? A mockumentary type film?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, anything else you want to add before we kind of go down that path? And then we will get to talking about some of the stars of the territory in a little bit here too.
There is one thing I just wanted to get over was Cobo Hall, where the Sheik ran his wrestling shows in Detroit, was a small hockey arena, which we would call it in Canada anyway. In the States, it was a basketball arena, I suppose. That's where the Pistons played for a long time. It's a 12,000 seat arena, so decent size, and had the nice stands, and then the sort of what we would call an ice surface, but also the basketball court down in the middle. So 12,000. Sheik's not selling that thing out every week, but he's getting a lot of fans in there, and this was like the perfect venue for the time. It would be a little bit smaller than the arena we have here, the Credit Union Center, Munson, a 12,000 seater, and this was the classic smoke-filled, dingy kind of building that was perfect for wrestling. And just as one little bit of trivia about Cobo Hall was the place where Martin Luther King made his famous speech where he said, "I have a dream." That was in Cobo Hall. Isn't that crazy?
That is wild. A big piece of history right there. And who knows, maybe that'll come up on a trivia question one of these days, Papa Smokes. Maybe we need to keep that one on the back burner for sure. So, but now going over to what I was talking about. So I was alluding to a mockumentary that was made in 1985 about big time wrestling called I Like to Hurt People. And before we give you a chance to talk about it, Papa Smokes, you sent over a particular song, and we're going to listen to, say, about a minute or so of it right now here. I'm gonna play it for you guys. This is the song by Sandman, I Like to Hurt People.
Stretch it now. Come on. It's a natural fact. Gotta look to attack and see your face. Make love to the man, and it's no lie. Gotta black with your eyes, cause I like to hurt people, and you better know why. Like to hurt people. I like to hurt people. I like to hurt them good. Hurt. Come on, I'm gonna mangle you good. Okay, watch this one. Now the blood I feel.
All right. Anyway, just because I want to make sure we don't get too many dings against the show here tonight for using other people's stuff. That it is really funny. You can check that out. It's "I Like to Hurt People" by Sam Man, Papa Smokes. I gotta ask, have you seen the mockumentary? And were you familiar with the song going into this, or is this within your research?
Very much so. No, to tell this story, Munson, I have to go back many years. This movie came out in 1985, was directed by Donald G. Jackson. They were originally planning to make a wrestling-based horror movie, and then plans for that got changed, and they decided to make a documentary, and then they didn't think that the documentary would sell so well, so they added some fictional elements to make it more of a movie, which they thought might sell better. It didn't get released at the time. It sat on the shelf. Like all the clips from it are from the 70s, but it didn't come out until 85. But at any rate, my history with this movie is when I was a little kid, me and my brother, my older brother Jay, we used to go to a video store. When do you remember when you used to rent video cassettes or DVDs? But at this time it was video cassettes. And this store had the big releases and the big movies of the time, but it also had kind of a lesser known independent cult type section. And we saw this movie, "I Like to Hurt People," and it had the Sheik, Abdullah the Butcher, the Funks, Ox Baker, Dusty Rhodes, a whole bunch of wrestlers in it. We thought, what the hell is this? So we rented it and watched it, and man, that I was just a fan for life since then. I watched this movie only again the second time when we were about to review Brian Solomon's Blood and Fire book about the Sheik. When was that? 2 years ago, maybe? And then I just watched it again this morning just to get really in the mood for big time wrestling. And I highly recommend it to all the fans. It's yeah, it's a mockumentary. It's a little bit silly. There's a couple of plot lines in it, but most of the footage is archival wrestling footage from big time wrestling in Detroit. Now there's a couple of little storylines that run through this movie. One of them is there's a movement, kind of a political lobby movement called STS, and it's Stop the Sheik. And it's a bunch of people protesting the Sheik at all the wrestling shows and in the street with signs that say "Sheik is a freak" and "Stop the Sheik" and all this kind of stuff. So you follow this guy as he's trying to infiltrate the wrestling world because he wants to get the Sheik and he wants the inside story. He keeps getting turned away at all the key moments in somewhat humorous fashion. There's also the story of the Funks versus the Sheik. Just they're chasing him, they're trying to get their hands on him. There's such a funny scene that I remember from watching this as a kid, where it's Terry and Dory Funk Jr. in the back halls of the arena, and Terry's on the old payphone, and he said, "Yeah, yeah, all right, all right." And he hangs it up and says to Dory Funk Jr., "All right, brother, it's all set up. We got the Sheik and the Butcher tonight." And they're so happy about it. Then you see the match and you realize they probably shouldn't have been happy about that, but wild stuff, man. Really, really wild stuff. Whole bunch of good footage. And then there's another little sort of storyline going on that involves the lady wrestler Heather Feather. You may have heard her name before. She's a big girl. She's 6 feet tall. She's quite heavy. She's very strong. She's very young in this. She's in her early 20s. And she gets interviewed by a reporter from the news who's saying, "Well, why do you want to be in this business?" And Heather Feather's saying, "Because I'm strong, because I can prevail in this business." And Heather Feather says, "The men get paid the most, and I don't think they should. I think women should get paid equally for that. For that reason, I want to fight a man in a match to show that I can beat him and to show that I should get paid the same as him." So that's another little storyline. First, they make her have an arm wrestling match against a man, yeah, in the ring during a card. She beats the man in the arm wrestling match. So then she gets a match against not a star, some kind of a job guy, but a man, and then she beats him too. So nice little story in there as well about Heather Feather. But this movie's funny. It's got Andre the Giant in it. It's got Dusty, and I guess the makers of this movie approached the Sheik about it, and he was into it because it's promotion, right? Like he's all about getting promotion, but he also told those guys, "I'm not giving you anything I don't want to give you. This is all kayfabe, right?" So he said, "If you do anything to expose anything about wrestling, it's done, and I'm going to take care of you guys afterwards if you cross the line." So they were very, very careful, and it's awesome. It's a really good movie. The only way I found it, it's not on YouTube. It's got to be I think one of the sites said it was on Triller or something like that, but I Googled it, and on the first page of results, there's some reviews and various things, but then there's some Australian website or something that has a perfectly good working copy of it on there. It's just under an hour. I think it's not a very long movie, but I highly recommend it to wrestling fans. It's not a serious historical documentary, and yet there's a bunch of serious historical material in it. So check it out. It's funny. It's interesting. As a wrestling fan, that's one of the cult movies about wrestling you can watch.
That's fantastic. Okay, so a few things. A, I'm gonna go find a copy so I can watch it, Bob Smokes. B,
Yeah.
I think we should revisit maybe doing a full review here on Bring Respect
Yeah.
Radio of it sometime.
I
And
thought of
C,
that too.
we got to say Merry Christmas to our good friend Basser who joined us in the house during that moment.
Yeah.
Basser, how you doing, brother?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so now I just talking about a few. I want to name some of the names, some of the bigger names that were in this territory here, Papa Smokes. I know a few have been covered as we've done this talk. And then I've got a match loaded up here that again, I think is a great one to show off big time wrestling, show off a couple of the biggest stars in big time wrestling as well, too, and one of the greater feuds as well. But I mean, we're talking about names like we had Abdullah the Butcher, Bobo Brazil, Haystacks Calhoun was there for quite a while. You had Dick the Bruiser, of course, the Dory and Terry Funk were in this promotion, Killer Kowalski, Tiger Jeet Singh, Dusty Rhodes, of course. Of course, the Sheik is one of the biggest reasons this one was where it was. Fritz von Erich was somebody who was stopped by this territory as well too, and then of course a lot of other names as well. Pop Smokes, I'm sure you could list a myriad of them as well from there. So.
Yeah, so many. It'd be quicker to list the big stars that didn't appear there at some point. Everybody did, including WWF guys like Bruno and Superstar Graham, and guys from Stampede, like some of the Hearts were there sometimes, and the Mongolian Stomper, and all kinds of guys. Bruiser Brody, Harley Race, the Briscoes, Buddy Rogers, World Champs, everybody like it was amazing. When a promotion gets hot, all the boys hear about it, and when the payouts are good as well, they're going to make the effort to go there. Sheik always, until the company started failing, was generous in his payouts, and of course the boys appreciated that.
You bet. One of those boys being one of his greatest rivals of all times, Papa Smokes, the Sheik and Bobo Brazil. Before I even hit play on this right here, talk a little bit about the history of these two gentlemen. And for those who are a little less familiar with Bobo Brazil, a little bit more about him as well, too.
Well, Bobo Brazil was a huge wrestling star in the 60s and 70s. Huge in his popularity, but also physically huge. He's 6'7", 275 pounds, something like that. Real big boy. And at a time when color was a bit of a barrier in a lot of business and a lot of entertainment business and all that, nobody in wrestling seemed to care about Bobo Brazil. They loved him. He was a baby face always, and everywhere he went, the fans loved him. He he was big, he was good, he had a nice smile, he was a good-looking guy and all that. The fans absolutely loved him, and the Sheik had worked with him in various territories around the U.S. and they liked each other. They had a friendship, and Bobo Brazil was one of those guys that the Sheik wanted to take care of, so to speak. Come to my city and my promotion anytime. You can work with me. I'm the top guy, and you'll get the top payout. So what better reason for a feud, right? Everybody's making money all the way around. So these two battled and brawled all around the states. This is one of the biggest feuds of the 60s and 70s. And Cobo Hall must have seen countless Bobo Brazil versus the Sheik matches. So many that they eventually tired of them as the two wrestlers got a bit older. But man, they put on some great stuff. And this was one of the cornerstone matches of big time wrestling.
You bet. And here we go. We're going to hit play for you on the YouTube side. It's about a 5.5-minute video here. The Sheik Brazil. And again, I'm hoping this was one of the ones you sent me, right, Papa Smokes? This was the match itself, I believe. Or
Yeah, but if it's from a playlist, they put the first match on the playlist, so you might have to.
might not be the match itself.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty wild music going on here, but
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear. So yeah, I think it was part of a playlist there. Maybe I could add that playing while you were discussing the whole feud between these two gentlemen there, Papa Smokes. But, it says here,
there'll be
play
something
all
good in there.
for sure. Just trying to get back to it here for us, and we'll get it right sooner or later.
And the Sheik was not known for long matches whatsoever. You would get to the main event in one of those Cobo Hall shows, and the Sheik would go for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes, and it'd be done. It would be wild, bloody, brawling for 6 minutes, but that's what you got usually in a Sheik match.
You bet. I think, of course, we're just going to do that for 1 second here. Let this thing load up properly. I believe I found us the matchup. We're just going to, of course, for the purpose of the YouTube stuff, can't leave the advertising on because we're not quite at the monetization rate here. So, if you want to help us get there, feel free to let all your friends know about OLE Podcasts. Make sure that they subscribe so we can get to that 1,000 subscribers plus here in 2025. Work our way up to something fantastic, something great. As here we go, I will go ahead and present and share screen for y'all. And here is the matchup already kind of in progress with some of as the case with a lot of these matchups that you can find here on YouTube, Papa Smokes. But or is this even this? Yeah, this one of the ones I believe was listed.
The Sheik now being draped over the ropes, and Bobo has been giving him a pretty good going over.
Bobo's so huge compared to the Sheik. The Sheik's not a big guy at all. He doesn't look physically intimidating whatsoever until you see those crazy eyes, and then you see the depths of violence he's willing to go to.
It was in his presentation too. He made himself feel bigger. And, if someone can make themselves feel bigger or intimidating in that way, you can sell being a bigger guy when you're not quite the biggest. But yeah, Bobo was big though. I mean, he was a big boy.
Really big. It's even wild, just in the little bit we've been watching, it's wild to see the Sheik even selling this much. He's not much for selling or bumping, but for his buddy Bobo and his greatest opponent, look at this, he's gonna really sell it. Oh man, I wish we could see a bit of the crowd. They have it so dark over the crowd there, but this is really old footage too.
Yeah, that footage doesn't translate very well in some of the capture, I'm sure, from the old days. I'm sure it would be mind blowing just to see how big these audiences were.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Cocoa Butt.
Yeah, Sheik really selling here in this one.
Yeah.
Here's the Sheik wrapped up with the
Oh,
rope
oh.
right now. Bobo's with that.
Seen as much of a baby face as Bobo was, you got to look at it in the context that you're going into a match against the Sheik. You can't just obey the rules the whole time. You have to get down and dirty with him too.
Well, that's the thing. It's we've said it before too, is that heel and babyface sometimes is just about who you're going after. It's not necessarily a change in who you are as a person, just a change in who you're kicking the crap out of.
Oh, that's a big guy going over the top rope right there.
He didn't get his trunk. He just threw that one. Bobo with that cocoa butt again. And the Sheik just hollered something to Ali Hassan, who is just Major Domo standing there. And here's Bobo.
Well, Bobo's caught up now with his feet in the ropes.
Bobo outside the ring. His foot caught in
These
the
guys all had their little signature bumps that they would take. Yeah, I bet you that's one that Bobo uses lots of. I get my feet tied up and now I'm vulnerable hanging outside the ring.
Meanwhile, it's got the referee distracted. Sheik selling it like he's, KO'd here in the middle of the ring. Or I guess did the ref call that?
Apparently the winner, but what an injustice.
What a finish.
Yeah, so the ref essentially, I believe, counted Bobo out maybe here. I thought the ref indicated that it was over. You see the audience a little better now.
Yeah.
Well, there's Bobo on top, but Pete Sacker will not count.
No, he ain't
Bobo
gonna
doesn't
count.
realize the
No.
fight is over. Do you want to count?
Yeah, he's giving it to the Sheik. He counted Bobo out.
Bobo wants to count here.
That must be Abdullah Farouk in there, the Sheik's manager. I can't really see him, but always by the Sheik's side.
The winner, the Sheik.
Oh, well, the fans don't like that one.
No, not at all.
But again,
But
I
see,
guess
I mean-
you're keeping Bobo looking pretty strong by not having him get pinned, but that's kind of a janky finish.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that. And I know a lot of days people always seem to look at it as an easy way out and everything too, but there was a lot of it used in the territory days and a lot more used wisely in the sense of countouts and DQs being used to protect certain people so that, they didn't have to be the one to always go over, but they were still made to look strong in the process of a loss, because the loss didn't mean they were tapping out. The loss didn't mean their shoulders were pinned to the mat for a 3 count. So I think that there is still some value in it. Yes, if there was a count out with a dude with his feet tied in the ropes nowadays, the entire internet would explode off the roof. Like, it would be massive, the amount of talk there would be online after a finish like that.
Yeah, it kind of looks a bit flat in that match, but I have the feeling you could jazz that up a little bit and really piss the fans off.
Hey, Dara, thanks for stopping by. Happy holidays to you as well. Appreciate you coming by here. But yeah, aside from that, Pop Smokes, that's all I really had in my notes. I want to know if there's anything else you want to talk about on the side of big time wrestling out of Detroit before we wrap her up here.
Sure. I know that you watched a few episodes of Big Time Wrestling. There's quite a few full episodes on YouTube of the weekly TV show you can watch. I had a good time watching that, but it's kind of hard to see how hot that promotion was by watching their TV because it's done in a very small studio. There's very, very few fans. There might be 50, 80 fans in there. I don't know, not very many. And the TV show to me lacks a little bit of zazz somehow by just only having kind of very one-sided, almost squash matches, um, uh, upper talent against job guys or enhancement talent, as they say nowadays. So they never really had any barn burner kind of matches, any competitive matches on their show, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. But if you never have an exciting match on your TV show, then your TV show never gets all that exciting. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
can still be used promotionally to show the talent you have and to show your featured guys. But to me, it would have been nice if in each 48 minutes or 60-minute show, they would have had one match, or at least show a match on tape from one of your house shows. Like, you remember that's how Al Tomko's Vancouver TV did it. They would
Yeah.
show studio job matches for the most part, but then you would get one feature match from one of the house shows or one of the signature shows from Cobo Hall or whatever, where you'd get two superstars against each other. So yeah, I like the big time wrestling show. I like the announcer. I can't think of his name right at this moment. Suppose I should know this, but it's good and everything. It's just it lacks the zazz.
Yeah. No, and I see where you're coming from as well too. I mean, it's easy for us to sit down and enjoy it, appreciate it from everything we've learned from it. But yes, definitely, if someone's looking for something a little bit more with zazz, there's other promotions out there that had that about them for the television side of things. So it doesn't do this promotion justice, but there's a lot to be said about the impact of the Detroit promotion as well too. But yeah, I think other than that, anything else, Papa Smokes? Or
I'm all out of notes. I would just like to encourage fans to watch some of the old matches from this because I just talked about the TV show, which isn't so hot, but I mean this promotion was red blazing hot for a good 8 to 10 years. So if you go back and watch some of those matches in that awesome Cobo Hall environment, you're gonna see some excellent territory wrestling, just different than Southern wrestling. It's different from Western wrestling. It's its own thing. It's Michigan wrestling, and it's very cool to watch. And just to say towards the end here, some of the legacy of big time wrestling and the Sheik's influence. I mean, the Sheik continued to wrestle well into his 60s because his fortune was failing a little bit. He had lived very high on the hog, so to speak, the whole time. He had that mansion in Detroit that in today's money would have been $6 million or something like that. Like he enjoyed his money and he spent it, but he went through a lot of it too. So he wanted to keep it going. So as we know, his nephew was Sabu, and he brought him up. Sabu wanted to be like his uncle, the Sheik. As we can all see, he did he wrestled quite a lot like the Sheik, except in the different way that he did wild spots off of the ropes and off the ropes to the outside and all that. Took the hardcore blood and guts wrestling that his uncle, the Sheik, had favored so much and kind of updated it to a new look where you're going off the top rope to the outside through tables, and now you've got the barbed wire matches and all that kind of stuff. And then Sabu's good friend in his training in Michigan, of course, was RVD, and that's another big wrestler that came up through the Sheik. The Sheik gave RVD his first chances, and used him as enhancement talent, but also knew that this kid could be something big someday. So RVD coming up through the ranks, given a shot by the Sheik through his friendship with Sabu and all that. And so there are still those out there that are still in the wrestling world today that have close ties to the Sheik.
Yes, they do. All right, well, that's going to be a stamp on the Detroit territory, and now we're going to put a stamp on the expenses here of the show because it got a lot more costly with that fancy ticker for Papa Smokes. Papa Smokes, let them know where they can find you.
All right, everybody. I'm on Elon Musk's free speech wonderland known as X. I can be found at smokes_papa. And then I watch stuff on Twitch. Also, I am at papa_smokes_.
That's where you can find Papa Smokes. That ticker down below. That's where you can find me. I'm Bobby Munson. As for what I've got going on or had going on, just recently I participated over at Mark Talks Wrestling on the yearly Mark Talks Wrestling Christmas Trivia edition, where I did okay for myself, Papa Smokes. There's a couple of trivias in a row now, including our own, that I've done decently. So go check that out. It's over on Mark's channel. You're going to be able to check me out, of course, this Sunday for Point of View, where, yeah, we have to admit defeat to Mark in the NFL predictions. He is going to take this thing, but it's been fun nonetheless. We're going to talk more coming up here soon about next season and how it's going to go, how we're going to change the face of what we're doing with the predictions and making it a little bit more fun for you guys. Outside of that, myself, Papa Smokes, every Saturday on Prairie Pro Wrestling, calling all the shots. We've got this Saturday our second part of the best of 2024 releases, then followed by more weekly wrestling action for you coming up in the new year. Stay tuned tonight, the Honor Ramble. It's Kimmy Sokol's farewell show, so come and check that out. Say a goodbye to Kimmy and join many of us, including so many guest appearances, including through video farewells. Here tonight, it's going to be a banger of a show, so check that out. It's all available right here at OLE Podcasts. You can check us out on all the different social media, YouTube, Twitch. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, all those wonderful things, and leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube after the fact. So that's going to be it for myself and for Papa Smokes. We appreciate you joining us here tonight for another trip through the territories. We will be back next Thursday night in the new year. So happy new year, everybody. We'll see you in a week's time. Take care.